Today we're going to talk about one of my all-time favorite grammar topics, which is complete sentences, including fragments and run-ons. And I love this because it's really fun to discuss, but also because it's one of my personal pet peeves with grammar, and run-ons just drive me crazy. So today we're going to talk about how to identify a complete sentence, an incomplete sentence or fragment, and a run-on sentence. First, let's review what a complete sentence even is. You know a sentence is complete if it has both a subject and a predicate. Some people like to say the same thing by calling it a subject, a verb, and a complete thought. So whether you use a 2-part checklist or a 3-part checklist, either way is fine. They both mean the same thing. Some synonyms would be an independent clause or a simple sentence. Independent clause, simple sentence, and complete sentence all mean the same thing. It's just one lone sentence that can stand by itself. A fun way to remember this is to think of complete sentences being like adults. Remember this simile if you can. Complete sentences have matured like grown-ups do. They have everything they need to succeed in life. They can stand alone and live on their own. Don't confuse a complete sentence with a fragment. Fragments don't have their act together yet, kind of like children who can't stand on their own and still depend on their parents. So let's talk about that. The term fragment is technically a word that means more than one thing. It's an umbrella term for anything that's incomplete. Fragments can include phrases or even individual words. If a group of words has just a subject or just a predicate, then it's definitely a fragment and it's a phrase. The other big type of fragment is a dependent clause. Unlike independent clauses, a dependent one can't stand on its own. It does have a subject and predicate, but something is wrong with it and it can't stand alone for some reason. Maybe it doesn't express a complete idea yet. Maybe words are missing. One hint to remember or find dependent clauses is to look out for awubis words, or also known as subordinated conjunctions. Awubis is an acronym that stands for although, after, as, when, while, until, before, because, if, since. Whenever you see an awubis word, that's a dead giveaway that there is a dependent clause going on, and therefore that chunk of words can't stand by itself. It's a fragment. If all that grammar is hard to think about, remember our adults metaphor. Fragments are like children. They're not grown up yet. They don't have all their needed parts to succeed in life, and they can't stand alone. Another way to remember is to think about the word fragment, how it's normally used in the real world, to describe stuff that's broken. For example, if you've ever heard of a fragment of glass after you've shattered a mirror or a window, then you know that a fragment is a broken piece, and it's just one tiny part of the original whole, and it's not the same anymore. And our third topic with complete sentences is run-ons. And here's where it starts to get a little fun. Run-ons are when we have 2 or more complete sentences, and we tried to put them together into one sentence, but we did it wrong. It's 2 sentences that were joined together incorrectly. They tried to form a compound sentence, but failed. Now, a lot of people like to say, oh, a run-on is just a sentence that keeps going for too long, and it goes on and on and on forever. But that's wrong. That definition is not grammatically correct. It's, again, 2 or more sentences that were joined together incorrectly. Most run-ons are the same type. Most of them are missing either a comma or a fanboys conjunction. Fanboys or coordinating conjunctions are for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so, or fanboys. So, that's the official way to remember run-ons. But if you need a fun way to think about it, remember that there's more than one way to make a compound sentence, and compound sentences are kind of like marriage. If you've got two complete sentences that are like adults and think they belong together, you can marry them into a compound sentence in one of three ways. Your first way is to put a semicolon between the two sentences. Now, if you squint a little bit, I think semicolons look a little bit like a diamond and then a wedding band beneath it. So I think of semicolons as that big blingy diamond that you could take to Vegas and get married with. Here's an example sentence. Reading is relaxing, semicolon. Writing is exciting, period. These are two independent clauses, and each half of the overall sentence is its own sentence that has been joined with the other one with a semicolon. Your second option is to do a comma and a fanboys word. And I like thinking about this like it's a plain little wedding band and a priest, or a rabbi, or a judge, or whatever you want. It doesn't have to be a priest, obviously. But the important part is to have both. A plain wedding band and an officiant of some kind. Because if you have just one and not the other, that's a run-on. And this is where most run-ons come from. For example, I could put a ring on anybody, but it doesn't mean we're married. Maybe it's just a friendship ring or means that we're just engaged. Also, I could walk up to any judge or officiant tomorrow and ask him or her to marry us, but that person is always going to ask for a ring and the ceremony. So you have to have both, or it could be a run-on. Here are two examples of run-ons. In this first run-on, there's a comma but no fanboys word. In the second sentence, there's a fanboys word but no comma. Now technically, you could always just keep two sentences separate, and you could divorce them with a period. So you don't have to make a compound sentence. You could always keep them separate, but that's sometimes less fun, especially if we want sentence variety. So this metaphor of marriage, again, is just one of many ways to think about how run-ons work and how to prevent them in a successful compound sentence. Here's just a little bit of practice to make sure we've all got it. Look at these 8 word groups and let's decide if they are complete, incomplete, or a run-on. Number 1, the red car. That is just a phrase. It's a fragment because I have a topic or a subject. I've got the red car, but there's no action or verb, so there's no predicate, and it can't stand on its own. Running across the field is similar but the opposite. I've got a predicate, I've got an action, but no subject. Since the game started, doesn't that kind of leave you hanging? Weren't you waiting for me to keep going? Yep. This awubis word, since, takes a subject and predicate and makes it dependent after all. So this is just a fragment. Number 4, we are best friends. That's fine. That's a complete sentence all by itself. I have a subject and I have a predicate. I've got my verb, expresses a complete thought. It's fine. Same thing with number 5. I forgot to text my mom is also a complete sentence. No problems. We should go study, semicolon. The test is tomorrow. Those are 2 complete sentences that have been correctly joined with a semicolon, so it is not a run-on. Number 6 is just fine. 7. Grammar is easy. People just need to memorize the rules. This is actually a run-on because I've got a comma, but no fanboys word to go with it. Number 8. Run-ons come from compound sentence errors, and we should proofread more closely. Which is kind of ironic because number 8 is a run-on. It's a compound sentence that went badly. We should have a comma right here to go with the fanboy's word and then we would be fine. Thank you for watching, and feel free to re-watch this video again if you still don't understand the concept or need a little bit more help.